Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling, well, one of our most fascinating missions yet, I think. We're pulling together sources that seem, honestly, completely unrelated at first glance.
Yeah, it's quite a mix. We've got stuff on highly technical mobile automation tools, then we jump into high-stakes poker strategy.
And then land on some pretty deep philosophical ideas about punishment and correction.
Exactly. It sounds disconnected, but what really ties these documents together is this theme of control, dealing with consequences, and managing risk.
Right, so our goal for you, the listener, is to pull out some really practical, actionable insights from all this.
Like, how do you actually minimize that constant mental drain we all feel from modern life? How do you get better at managing serious risk, whether it's digital stuff or financial?
And maybe most importantly, how do we use feedback, whether it's coming from technology, like an automated alert, or from a coach, or even just from nature? How do we use that feedback to actually grow in a smart, targeted way?
Yeah, and the sources frame this whole thing through strategy. We're going to explore this idea. Why managing your phone, which, let's be honest, can be a pretty dangerous high-performance tool if you're not careful.
Ah, dangerous is right. Like giving a toddler a sports car sometimes.
Totally. Why managing that requires the exact same kind of strategic thinking, the same discipline as managing your chips at a serious poker game.
It's all about building these systems, these guardrails, to protect yourself from your own emotional impulses, isn't it?
That's the heart of it. We live in these environments, digital ones, competitive ones, that often feel like they're designed, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not, just to create chaos and distraction.
So this deep dive is really about figuring out how we can systematically, take back some control over those environments. Okay, so let's dig into that, starting with probably the biggest source of modern chaos for many of us, our phones.
Mm-hmm.
We really have to start by understanding the danger of just sticking with the default settings. Our phones, straight out of the box, they're basically set up for maximum engagement.
Which is just a nice way of saying they're designed to encourage behavioral addiction.
Exactly. And we talk about wasted time, sure, but the sources really hammer home a deeper consequence, how it messes with our actual human
Oh,
interactions.
yeah. That thing where people prioritize their phone over the person right in front of them, checking it mid-conversation.
Ugh, yes, it
Uh,
feels awful when it happens to you.
And the sources argue it's slowly but really surely damaging our relationships. Those default settings, the constant pings, the always-on availability, they're not neutral. They're actively working against our focus and connection. They're liabilities we have to manage.
They're absolute focus killers.
Yeah.
And the cost of this constant interruption, it's actually kind of staggering when you see the numbers. Our sources really help quantify this.
Right. Even a single tiny notification popping up can completely shatter your concentration, what psychologists call the flow state.
That magic zone,
Yeah.
right? Where you're deeply focused, doing really productive work, maybe having creative breakthroughs.
Exactly that. And here's the kicker, the statistic that should honestly make everyone pause. The research suggests that after just one notification pulls you out of that deep work,
eh,
it can take up to 20 minutes of recovery time just to get back to the same level of focus and concentration you had before.
20 minutes for one
About
notification.
20 minutes.
Wow. Let's think about that math for a second. If you get, say, 3 notifications an hour during work, emails, messages, whatever, which is probably low for a lot of people,
Very conservative. Yeah.
you're losing a full hour of potential deep work every single day, just dealing with the interruption and then that long recovery tail.
It's huge. If your job needs any kind of real focus, an unmanaged phone basically guarantees you're operating way below your potential.
It makes the case for taking pretty radical control over your digital environment. Undeniable, really.
We need tools, right? Tools to fight back against this default chaos.
Yeah.
And that brings us neatly to one of the main technical solutions explored in the sources, Shizuku.
Okay, let's dive into the tech here. Shizuku. It's presented as this really powerful tool for Android phones that lets you do some quite sophisticated system-level automation.
Right. And the crucial thing, the reason it's such a game changer, is that it manages this without forcing you to root your device.
And that distinction is massive, isn't it? Could you unpack why rooting is such a big deal and often a bad idea?
For sure. For the longest time, if you wanted that really deep control over your Android phone automating system settings, running background processes that normal apps can't touch, you had to root it.
It sounds powerful.
It is powerful, but also really dangerous. Rooting essentially bypasses the core security layers of the operating system. You could easily brick your phone, turn it into a useless paperweight.
Ouch.
Yeah. And maybe even more practically for most people, rooting instantly breaks compatibility with a lot of important apps. Think banking apps, payment apps, even some streaming services. They detect root and refuse to run because of the security risk.
Okay, so rooting gives you power, but breaks security and compatibility.
Hmm.
How does Shizuku manage to give you that power without those downsides?
It's clever. Shizuku uses something called the ADB, which stands for Android Debug Bridge. This is actually a legitimate tool that developers use to communicate with devices.
Right, I've heard of ADB.
So Shizuku gets activated once using a command sent via ADB, usually from a computer. But after that initial setup, it runs locally on the phone. It essentially tricks the system into thinking it's running commands as if it were an ADB shell.
Ah, so it's leveraging a legitimate pathway, but in a persistent way on the device itself.
Exactly. It grants enormous power, very close to root in some ways, but because it's not full permanent root access, you keep your security integrity, your banking apps still work, everything functions normally, and then you can run these complex system level macros.
Okay, that's the technical magic. It's like having the race car's engine, like we said, but also installing this incredibly smart, proactive safety system. So let's make it real. What kind of automation, what kind of macros are we talking about here? What does this look like in practice?
Well, it's all about building those systemic guardrails we mentioned, designing things to stop you from making costly mistakes or just eliminating those little background annoyances that constantly chip away at your mental energy.
So moving beyond just turning notifications off into more active management.
Way beyond, we're talking about systemic behavior modification automated.
Okay, give us an example. What's a multi-step macro that really shows off this kind of system-level control?
Okay, sure. There's a great example in the sources that goes way past a simple reminder. Imagine you're someone who really needs to watch your battery and data usage. Maybe you travel a lot or have a limited plan, but you constantly forget to turn off Wi-Fi when you leave the house.
Uh-huh. Happens to the best of us.
So a Shizuku-enabled macro could do this. First, the trigger. Your phone detects you've disconnected from your home Wi-Fi network. It knows you've left.
Okay.
Second, condition check. The macro immediately checks if your mobile data is currently switched on.
Right.
Third, proactive action. If mobile data is on, the macro doesn't just warn you, it automatically does something like engage a low power mode. Maybe it even says a temporary, stricter data usage limit based on your location or the time of day.
Wow. Okay. So it takes action for you.
Yes. And fourth, the feedback mechanism. Because it has that system control, it can then send you a very specific custom notification, maybe through WhatsApp or an email like the source mentions, saying something clear like, hey, you left home Wi-Fi, mobile data is on, engage low power mode, remember to turn data off when you get where you're going.
That is genuinely proactive consequence management. It takes the burden off you having to remember that repetitive kind of low-value task every single time.
Exactly. I mean, you mentioned feeling embarrassed about blowing through data caps. This kind of automation makes that sort of thing almost impossible. It's necessary, like you said, not just tech for tech's sake.
Absolutely necessary. And it also tackles those really irritating sort of hidden things that drain us, right? Like background processes we didn't even know were running.
Oh, totally. The sources mention using automation to fight back against things like Google Play Protect, constantly re-enabling itself, even if you've specifically turned it off because it interferes with some custom setup you have.
Ah, those little system battles that just wear you down over time.
Precisely. Each one is tiny, but they add up to this massive mental overhead. Shizuku can just lock in your desired state and stop the system from fighting you. It enforces your rules.
Now, the sources also made a point that figuring this stuff out, building this level of personalized control, wasn't just point and click.
Mm.
There was a story about persistence and using other tools.
Yes, a really interesting anecdote. The user had apparently been wrestling with one specific, complex technical problem for something like 5 years. Tried everything, couldn't crack it.
5 years.
Yeah. But then, by using tools like GPT, specifically ChatGPT was mentioned, they were finally able to properly articulate the problem, ask the right kinds of detailed questions, and iterate through potential solutions with the AI's help until, bang, they finally figured out the complex setup.
That really highlights something powerful, doesn't it? That combination of cutting-edge tech like AI, plus that persistent human wisdom, knowing what questions to ask, not giving up, that feels like a modern superpower.
It absolutely is. It's not just having the tool, it's the strategic, persistent approach to using the tool to solve hard problems.
Which brings us right back to that opening metaphor.
Yes.
The source material literally said, phones are awesome but dangerous like giving a child the keys to a race car. Managing them effectively isn't about quick reflexes or willpower alone. It requires strategy, foresight, building those automated guardrails, using that targeting logic. You have to, like, build the safety features into the car before you try and drive it fast.
Well put. You need the system in place first. And that idea, managing a dangerous, high-performance environment, it transitions almost perfectly from the smartphone race car to the high-stakes laboratory of the poker table.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly smooth shift. We're moving from managing digital consequences, data overages, battery drain, distraction, to managing very real financial and competitive risk.
And poker works so well as this kind of micro-laboratory because the feedback is instant and often quite painful, punitive even.
Right. Every choice you make is a bet, and every bet has an immediate result, win or lose. The sources actually frame this quite philosophically, calling poker a game of punishment.
What they mean by that is basically every single action you take at the table is either designed to punish an opponent for making a mistake, or it ends up punishing you for making a mistake in your own strategy.
So survival, long-term success, hinges on understanding punishment and consequence.
Absolutely. The key lesson, they argue, for longevity in poker, or maybe anything competitive, is deeply understanding when to take risks, and probably more importantly, when you absolutely need to avoid risk.
Okay, so let's see this in action. We've got two really good hand examples here that illustrate this idea of strategic consequence. Let's start with hand breakdown one, ace-queen on a wet board. This one shows a common mistake driven by anxiety.
Exactly. Anxiety and maybe a misunderstanding of the situation. So, the scenario. The player has ace-queen offsuit, pretty strong starting hand. They hit top pair on the flop and ace comes down. Great. Right.
Seems good so far.
But the board texture is critical here. The flop is described as an ace-high monotone board. Let's just quickly break that down for anyone not deep into poker lingo.
Yeah, please do. Monotone board.
Monotone just means all three cards on the flop are the same suit. So maybe the ace of diamonds, the nine of diamonds, and the four of diamonds, three diamonds.
Got it. All one color.
Right. And strategically, that screams danger. Huge danger. Because anyone holding any two diamonds already has a made flush, or if they have just one diamond, they have a draw to a very strong hand. This is what poker players call a wet board. It's saturated with possibilities.
Okay, so wet means lots of draws, lots of potential for big hands already made. What's the opposite?
The opposite is a dry board. Think like king of hearts, seven of spades, two of clubs, rainbow flop, no matching suits, cards aren't connected,
Yeah.
much less threatening. On our wet monotone board, though, you have to be extremely careful, even with top pair.
Okay, makes sense. Wet board, danger. But the player in the example, they have top pair with ace-queen. They hit their ace. So they decide to bet big, right, over the pot. Trying to get value, maybe push people out.
Exactly. They want to be aggressive, maybe force out draws, get paid. But the coach in the source material immediately flags this as a major bet sizing error. And crucially, an error likely driven by emotion, not by sound strategic logic.
Okay, so what should they have done, according to the coach?
The coach recommended a much smaller bet, something like only owed or maybe half the pot.
Huh. That feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? You have the best hand, or at least a very strong hand. Why bet less?
Right. Seems weird. But the reasoning behind it gets to the core of sophisticated poker strategy. It's all about targeting logic.
Targeting logic. Explain that.
Okay, think about what that big UPOT bet actually achieves on this specific wet board. Who calls you? Who folds?
Well, presumably weaker hands, like maybe someone who hit a 9 or has a smaller ace, they might fold to the big bet.
Exactly. Hands that you are beating, hands you want to keep in the pot to get more money from later. They fold. And who calls your big bet?
Uh-oh. Probably someone with two diamonds already, or maybe a set or a really strong draw, hands that might actually have you beat or have huge equity against you.
Precisely. So the big bet successfully folds out the hands you beat and gets called mostly by hands that either beat you or have a great chance to beat you. It inflates the pot when you are most likely to be behind or vulnerable.
Ah, I see. So the big bet isn't really protection on this kind of board. It's actually creating more danger for yourself by building a bigger pot against strong hands.
That's exactly it. The player later admitted to the coach something really revealing. They said they often felt less anxious trading stocks than playing poker, which suggests this deep-seated need to just end the uncertainty quickly, force the action, get it over with.
So the big bet was driven by that Anxiety, just wanting to resolve the tension.
It seems so. That anxiety-driven aggression led them to a bet size that actually maximized their potential loss against better hands while getting no value from worse hands. Good poker strategy, the source argues, is always about two things: maximizing value from worse hands you beat, and minimizing your loss against better hands that beat you.
And that big bet did the opposite on both counts.
Correct. Your bet sizing needs to be logical, targeted. It's like your digital macro for controlling risk at the table.
That connection back to the phone automation is crystal clear now. Betting OPOT there is like turning off all your Shizuku macros and just hoping for the best. It feels aggressive, but it's actually just reckless exposure.
Perfectly put. You have to use targeting logic. Ask yourself, what hands am I trying to get value from? What hands am I trying to fold out? Does this bet size achieve that goal? If not, it's probably a flawed bet, likely driven by fear or ego, not strategy.
Okay, fascinating. Now let's contrast that with hand breakdown 2. This one involves pocket sixes and focuses more on emotional discipline, right?
Yes, discipline and situational awareness. Here, the player is the chip leader in a tournament. They have the most chicks at the table, maybe in the whole event. They're holding pocket sixes, a decent but vulnerable pair.
And they face a weird bet.
A very weird, very suspicious bet. An opponent makes an almost all-in shove, like they bet almost all their chicks but leave just a tiny bit behind. It's not a full all-in.
Why would someone do that?
It's often a psychological ploy. It's deliberately deceptive. On the surface, it looks weak. You think, why didn't they just push it all? Are they scared? Maybe they're bluffing.
Right, it invites you to think they're trying to steal the pot cheaply.
Exactly. The phrase the source uses is key. This bet looks weak, is strong. It's designed to induce a call from a chip leader who feels they can afford it or whose ego gets involved.
And as the chip leader, you can afford it, technically. You have the stack to cover the bet easily. So why was folding pocket sixes here praised as impressive? Shouldn't the chip leader bully and take the small risk?
This gets to a really crucial strategic point in tournament poker. Yes, the chip leader can afford the chips, but their single most valuable asset isn't just the number of chips they have right now.
What is it then?
It's their tournament equity, the value of simply being the chip leader, still in the game, with the power to pressure everyone else. Calling this weird, strong-looking shove with a marginal hand like pocket sixes, it risks that entire position.
Even though the bet itself isn't that big compared to their stack.
Exactly, because when this bet looks weak, is strong, the opponent very often has a monster hand. Pocket aces, kings, ace king, something that crushes pocket sundays. Calling and losing, even if it doesn't bust the chip leader, severely damages their stack and their ability to dominate. It risks their tournament life, essentially.
Okay. So the discipline wasn't just about saving a few chips. It was about preserving the massive strategic advantage of being the chip leader, avoiding unnecessary high-risk gambles, even when they seem cheap.
Precisely. That fold was impressive because it showed high-level strategy isn't just about aggression or trying to win every single pot. It's about emotional intelligence and discipline, recognizing danger, controlling the impulse to gamble, and knowing when the best play is simply to preserve your capital, your tournament equity.
Just like using Shizuku to automate focus preserves your mental capital for the truly important decisions.
Exactly the same principle. The best play is often the one that minimizes the downside, protects your core advantage, even if it means passing up a small, tempting gamble. It's about longevity.
Okay, this is a really nice pivot point. We've gone from the strategy of preserving digital focus to preserving financial or competitive capital in poker. And now we zoom out even further to think about preserving human potential, maybe, looking at the philosophy behind punishment versus correction.
Yeah, the sources take this quite deep. They pose this really fundamental question that applies way beyond poker or tech. Is punishment actually essential? Is it beneficial in society and how we raise kids and how we manage teams, even in our own personal growth?
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
And we probably need to define what we mean by punishment first, right? Versus just like consequence.
Definitely. The sources start exploring this, using nature as a sort of baseline. They have this metaphor of a young lamb maybe ignoring subtle warnings from the flock, the wind direction, whatever, and it just keeps walking towards a hidden pack of wolves.
Okay.
The consequence of that choice, getting eaten, is presented as a kind of natural punishment. It's not imposed by some authority figure for breaking a rule. It's the inherent brutal feedback from an unforgiving environment.
Right. Nature doesn't really do warnings in the human sense. It just has consequences.
Pretty much. And this idea of natural consequence helps introduce the concept of progressive correction. If you watch animals teaching their young, it's rarely maximum force first.
Hmm.
It's usually a sequence, right? Maybe a gentle nudge first. If that doesn't work, a firmer push. Then maybe a growl or a snap. And only then, perhaps, real exposure to danger. The feedback escalates.
So small consequences, small punishments, if you want to call them that, they can serve a purpose. They can be corrective, adjusting behavior, rather than just being purely destructive. They teach boundaries before the wolves get you.
Exactly. They establish those necessary guardrails against lethal risk, you could say.
Now, when humans think about this stuff, about punishment and correction, there's a pretty big split in how we approach it, isn't there? The sources touch on this worldview divide.
Yeah, a major one. On one side, you've got philosophies like Stoicism. The Stoics, generally speaking, argued that enduring suffering, facing hardship, even embracing punishment was actually the path to becoming strong, resilient, virtuous.
So for them, punishment wasn't something to be avoided necessarily.
Not entirely. Think of someone like Epictetus, who was literally a slave. For him, the external world was chaotic, often brutal and punishing. The strategy wasn't to change the world or avoid the pain, but to master your internal reaction to it. Enduring the punishment, the suffering, without breaking, that's what built inner strength and wisdom. It's that tough it out, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of philosophy.
Okay, that's one perspective. What's the counter-argument presented?
The counter is what the sources call the empathetic view. This perspective argues much more strongly for replacing harsh, imposed punishment with kind guidance and education whenever possible.
Why? What's the reasoning there?
The core argument is that the negative side effects of harsh punishment, things like fear, resentment, trauma, damage to relationships, often outweigh any supposed benefit in changing behavior. It might stop the behavior short term, but it creates other problems.
So it's a focus on minimizing harm, maximizing positive development through understanding and support.
Exactly. So you have this tension. Do we try to make people tough enough to withstand a punishing world, like the Stoics might suggest? Or do we try to make the process of correction itself less punishing, more empathetic, more about guidance?
And how do the sources suggest we navigate this? Where do they land?
They seem to synthesize these ideas really effectively through the lens of what makes for good teaching, whether you're teaching others or trying to correct your own behavior.
Okay.
While the lamb might have to learn about wolves the hard way through natural consequence, the sources argue that human teaching ideally shouldn't require trauma to be effective.
We can do better than nature's brutal feedback loop.
We should aim to do better. The core idea that comes through is this. The essence of effective teaching or correction is doing it with kindness, not through enforcing power hierarchies or using unnecessary force.
Okay, let's tie that back to our earlier examples. How does that apply?
Well, think about the phone notifications. Trying to just tough it out, stoic style, constantly fighting the urge to check, enduring the distraction. It's painful. It drains your mental energy, your capital.
Right, it's exhausting.
Using a Shizuku macro to automatically silence non-essential apps during work hours. That's the empathetic correction. It gently guides your behavior by removing the temptation, eliminating the source of the repeated suffering proactively. It's correction through system design, not willpower alone.
And the poker hand,
Yeah,
the ace queen.
same idea. Trying to white-knuckle your way through that wet board with a big, anxious OPOP bet. That's like trying to endure the financial risk through sheer force of will, maybe driven by fear.
The stoic approach, maybe. Bracing for impact.
Could be seen that way. Whereas calmly adjusting your bet size down to OPOT because your system, your understanding of targeting logic tells you it's the optimal, least volatile, most value-oriented play. That's the empathetic correction.
You're correcting your approach based on logic and kindness to your own bankroll, rather than just reacting with force.
Exactly. You're building resilience by mastering the system, understanding the environment, not just by gritting your teeth and enduring the system's punishments when you make a mistake. Small, targeted feedback, whether it's an automated phone alert or a carefully sized poker bet, guides behavior gently. It minimizes the mental or financial trauma that a big, reactive, anxiety-driven punishment might inflict.
Okay, this is great. This is where we really pull all these different threads together, from the phone automation, the poker discipline, right through to the philosophy of correction.
And the strategic overlap becomes super clear when you frame it around conserving your mental energy, your focus, for the decisions that actually matter most.
Right, like think about the direct connection between controlling your digital environment and game theory in poker.
Yeah, those mobile macros, the Shizuku automation. Fundamentally, their purpose is to reduce decision fatigue. That constant background hum of having to manage notifications, fix little system glitches, remember mundane tasks like turning off Wi-Fi. It drains you.
Uses up your limited willpower for the day on unimportant stuff.
Exactly. And that is the precise same goal as using clear poker theory and disciplined bet sizing. When you automate your response to common spots, knowing you should fold pocket sixes to that weird shove as the chip leader, or always bet small on that wet board with top pair, you stop wasting mental energy on those solved problems.
You save your focus, your mental capital, for the truly complex, unique situations where judgment and creativity are needed.
Precisely. You avoid squandering that precious resource on low-value, repetitive decisions, whether it's dismissing a notification or making a standard poker fold.
And the sources really emphasize that genuine growth, the valuable kind, comes from conscious exposure to challenge, right? Not from just being subjected to trauma or constant enforced anxiety.
Yeah, that's a key distinction. We should actively seek out the difficulties we're equipped or learning to handle, like tackling that complex Shizuku setup with GPT's help, or analyzing a tricky poker hand using targeting logic. That's chosen difficulty.
It's different from just passively suffering the consequences of chaos, the trauma of a massive unexpected data bill because you forgot a setting, or the financial pain of blowing your bankroll on an impulsive, anxiety-driven poker bet.
Right. One is learning and growth in a managed environment. The other is just damage from unmanaged risk.
Okay, so let's distill this down. We've gathered some core teachings here, kind of a quick guide for the listener, pulling from all these different sources.
Sounds good. Let's start with the quick poker strategy takeaways because they apply so broadly to managing risk anywhere. First one, bet sizing is crucial. Always. It's not about showing strength, it's about targeting. Who or what are you trying to influence with this action, this investment, this communication?
Good one. Second, you absolutely have to learn to recognize the board texture of your situation. Is the environment you're in wet, meaning high risk, volatile, lots of hidden dangers like a shaky market or maybe even a tense negotiation? Or is it dry, stable, predictable, lower threat? Your strategy has to adapt instantly.
Crucial. And third, always ask yourself, does this action actually protect me or does it just expose me to more risk? Use that targeting logic we talked about, structure your actions to get the most from weaker positions or players or market opportunities, and minimize your losses against stronger ones. Don't just react with anxiety-driven aggression. That usually makes things worse.
Okay, those are powerful. Now for the mindset and philosophy takeaways, which apply everywhere. The big one. You need to actively control your environment, digital, physical, mental, with the same care you'd use at a high-stakes poker table. Use systems, tools, macros, routines, pre-planned responses, whatever it takes to eliminate that repeated mental drain from chaos.
Yeah. And remember that core teaching idea. Feedback can be gentle and still be incredibly effective. Harsh punishment isn't the only way, or often even the best way, to achieve correction. Aim for correction with kindness, whether you're guiding a team member, teaching your kids, or setting up an automation to gently nudge your own behavior. That's the goal.
Love that. Finally, the technology as a teacher takeaway, bringing it back to our modern capabilities. That point about tech plus wisdom being a 21st century superpower.
Right. That story about using GPT to finally crack that 5-year-old automation problem is the perfect example.
Right.
Persistent human inquiry, knowing how to ask the right questions, combined with powerful tools that give you unprecedented control, that lets you conquer overwhelming complexity.
And free up your limited time and brain power for the truly strategic, high-value thinking that only humans can do.
Exactly. Master the tools to master yourself. Hashtag outro cure. And, for anyone listening who wants to explore some of the deeper philosophical ideas we touched on about risk, control, discipline, enduring hardship, the source material did specifically mention the influence of a book called Stoic Samurai.
Ah, yes, I remember seeing that.
Apparently, its original French title is Samurai Stoic. It's this interesting blend of Stoic philosophy and sort of samurai warrior principles. It's available in a few languages now, French, English, maybe German soon.
Sounds fascinating. A cross-cultural look at resilience and strategy.
Yeah, it seems to really dig into how these ideas of discipline, managing suffering, and systemic thinking apply across different fields, whether it's martial arts or making tough decisions under pressure. Might be worth checking out if this stuff resonates.
Definitely noted. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with one final, maybe provocative thought that hopefully ties all these threads, the phone, the poker, the philosophy together.
Ask yourself this. Where in your own life, right now, could be at work, could be personal. Are you defaulting to making large, anxiety-driven bets?
Meaning like big, aggressive, potentially really costly actions or reactions.
Exactly. Where are you doing that when maybe a much smaller, more targeted corrective action would actually achieve more, would maximize the value you get while minimizing your potential loss or downside?
Are you maybe having that huge confrontational argument when a small, clear, kind correction would have worked better?
Are you making massive impulsive changes when a small incremental adjustment is what's needed?
Are you basically going all in with your time, your energy, your money, or maybe even the trust in your relationships out of that fear of uncertainty like that anxious U-pot bet?
Or could you shift your strategy? Could you start using that deliberate humor pot bet logic, using targeted actions to make sure you capture the most long-term value while carefully preserving your most important asset, which is ultimately your own well-being, your focus, your personal equity in the game of life?
Something to think about. Try applying that strategic targeting logic starting today.
That's the deep dive for this time. We'll catch you on the next one.
Welcome. I will meet my poker teacher in a couple of minutes. I have very little time left. We're gonna have an open discussion. Then once that's done, we're gonna talk about poker. I play a live game. If we find time, we'll find out. But usually we have a discussion before we analyze some hand. I want to take this moment to introduce you again my book. I have written it in several languages, and I'm gonna show you that. This is my Stoic book. That's my fourth book. It's in French. It's called Samurai Stoic. Here you have the same book in English, A Stoic Samurai. Now I hope I can translate it into German and publish a German translation of that book during the next couple of days, during the next week. I hope that that is possible. Then it would be available in German. For now, it's not. But if I manage to find a time and I do the work, it will be available in German during the next week. At least I hope so. Here we have my fifth book. And the first link I'll show you is Diamond. The first link is the German version of my book. And now the same book is in French, La Voix du Diamond Stoic. I always write my books in French. Every other translation is only a translation. But the translations are usually great. They are very interesting, even for me. I really like it in general. And I managed to do it faster now than in the past to translate a book. But it's still a lot of work. It's not just translation. You have to create a document. You have to do everything. It's a lot of work when you go in detail. You don't do that in 2 hours. Now, the English version of that book, The Way of the Stoic Diamond. The Way of the Stoic Diamond. That's my fifth book. This is awesome, but now I have to switch to my meeting because my poker teacher is probably already waiting.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. What about you?
Don't feel great, but don't feel bad either. Just, I feel normal.
If I look at my life, great is probably a little exaggeration, but I feel quite good, just as you do. What makes me happy is that I've finally managed to install Shizuku. Do you know what Shizuku is?
No.
When you don't want to root your phone, then you can use Shizuku. And it will allow you to do a lot of the stuff that normally you need root for.
Okay.
What a rooted phone is. I think in the past they called it also...
Use administration, basically.
Exactly. That's a good definition. In the past, I think they called it jailbreak. They used the term rooting a device. The issue with rooting is that it's very dangerous because if the rooting setup messes up, then your phone might not work anymore. Even when everything goes well, then there's a good chance that a lot of apps won't work anymore because they check if the device is rooted. When it is rooted, they will not run. But other apps run, there are apps that only run if you have a rooted device. It's a mess. Unless you have a flagship phone and there's a community who has tested the root and explained everything online, I don't think it's a good idea. If you don't buy the last iPhone, what is the last iPhone? The 14, I think. If you don't buy that or the last Samsung flagship, for the rest of the device, there's no community behind any root. Do not root my devices. because I tried, but it's way too difficult unless you have the device that have explanation how to it won't work. But with Shizuku, I managed to do still a lot. The issue with Shizuku is every time you reboot your phone, I do that once a week. By default, my phone switches off and on again every Sunday at 3 a.m. Once that it reboots, I'll have to give it permission again. And for that, you have to use your PC. But it's just one command you have to enter in your PC, and once how to do it, it doesn't take so long. Now, I'll tell you all that because since I managed to use Shizuku, I can now create macros on my phone. I can create a certain behavior at a certain moment when something happens. It's a way of automating certain tasks. You can try to change behavior of the phone. For example, the Google Play Store has something that is very annoying. It's called Play Protect. That thing will scan all your apps. And if you install apps from other sources than the Play Store, he doesn't like it and he tries to uninstall them. That's very annoying. And there's an option, actually. Google gives you an option to make it not run. But every time you press, oh, I don't want it to run, it stops running for 24 hours or 48 hours, but then it switches automatically on again. So that's very annoying. Today, for example, I made a deep research with ChatGPT. ChatGPT told me that there is a solution. If you change something in the terminal with your PC by using Shizuku, you can change that behavior. It should not switch on again. I'll see if that works or not. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of stuff you can do that before was impossible. I have a lot of macros on my PC, but now I also can have macros on my phone. That's a nice thing. Now, not all the things you want to do work. For example, I want my Wi-Fi to turn off after a certain period of time because I don't have unlimited data. Sometimes I just put it on for a small thing, but 5 minutes afterwards, I don't need it anymore. Then I actually would like my data connection 5G to turn off. Because if I don't, well, then in one day, suddenly my phone downloads 2 or 10 gigas. It costs me 40 USD. To avoid that, I would like it to just stop after a certain time. That should be easy, a macro like this. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. But other macros work. I found a way around. I have warning messages that pop up, remind me to turn it off. My solution was when I put data on, I have warning messages first that appear. Once the warning messages are because I could still forget the warning message, I get a WhatsApp message and I also get an email. So then I will see the WhatsApp message and the email on my phone. It will remind me to check if I did turn data off. Because I didn't do it last month and it wasted in one day $40 for nothing. Because I didn't even use it. It's just my phone started downloading. It's downloaded a huge amount of data. It was very expensive. Because I have a subscription, but only for low data. Because most of the time I don't use data. Everywhere I go, there's Wi-Fi. So I would anyway switch to Wi-Fi. I don't want to go into too much detail because it might be annoying to you. But I couldn't do that at all in the past. Every time I tried to make one, I didn't manage. I looked at all the tutorials online and none of them was clear. None of them really explained what you have to do to make it run. It's not that complicated once you know. It's quite a fast process. But if you don't really know how to make it run, well, then it will never run. The only reason why I managed is because ChatGPT is awesome and you can talk to him and he knows everything about the internet. He knows everything that works because he can make even deep researches. And as long as you keep asking questions, he keeps explaining it to you. So if you want to waste 6 hours of your life or 8 hours of your life to try to find a solution, there's a good chance you can, but you have to be very persistent and you have to not give up. But I like that. I like when there's an obstacle and I can overcome it. I think that's awesome when that happens. And why do I do all this? Because phones are awesome. You can do a lot of work with them. You can do a lot of stuff that is important in my opinion, but they are also really bad. I don't know if we talked already about it, but all the notifications are horrible. You have to make a very good management of your notification. I only want the notification that I'm interested in. All the rest, I don't want to receive it. That's hard because some apps give you the notification you want, but they also give you a lot of notification you don't want. And you have to do a lot of work just to get only what you want. Being able to use macros helps a lot in that regard. It is said that every time you get a notification, you look at that notification, it takes you 20 minutes to get back to work. 20 minutes. Because you think about the notification, you are out of flow, the flow state where you work, you forget everything, you forget to drink, you forget to pee. The only thing you do is work. Every time you get a notification, it takes you 20 minutes to get back into work. Now, if that happens a lot, you will waste a lot of time. Most of the notifications are not good at all. And the second thing that is really bad, in my opinion, there are more things that are bad at that, is that people get addicted to the phone. They always check the phone. When I sit in town in a restaurant with somebody, it is normal that a guy picks up his phone during 1 hour. And when he talks to me, it's normal that he picks up his phone like 3 or 4 times and he checks for messages even when he has no messages. People are really addicted to their phone, and that's a very bad thing. Because if you're in a relationship and you always pick up your phone, you tell the other person that whatever happens on my phone is much more important than you. That's really bad for your relationship. Because the other person, even if he says he doesn't mind, if you do it over, he gets hurt. But I think we already talked about that. I don't remember exactly, but there's a good chance we already did. Anyways, the only way to have a phone that isn't so bad for you, because you can control what happens, is that you have administration privilege, that you can do a lot of stuff and use macros. Every time I find something that's annoying, I think, how can I change that? What macro can I do? How can I make the behavior more pleasant for me? Once the macro run, they run. The only thing I have to do once a week for me, because I reboot, is enable again. But that's done quite fast. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes on 2 phones. Now I stop talking. I hear all your replies. Sorry for telling you that, but I found it very interesting because I wanted to do that for years and I always failed. And only thanks to ChatGPT, because he's smart, I could finally do it. To me, it's awesome that they put coder, an informatician, a historian. They did put very interesting people that have more knowledge than a PhD in university has in my pocket. I can talk to them all day long, not totally for free, but for not much money. That's really awesome to me.
Yes, I recommended it to my friend. I haven't heard of Shizuku. I use my phone for very basic purposes. I don't think I need to root my phone or extra features, but my friend's very interested in these sorts of hacking type of things, I think. I sent it to him and we'll see. I can ask him for next time one of the things he likes really using. He's also similar to you in that he's interested in technology. There's this interesting device he's using, but I don't know it now. I will ask it next time.
Is your friend Mikhail or are you talking about somebody else?
No, somebody else.
Okay. There's a lot of things you can try. There could be stuff that doesn't work with my phone, but do work with your phone. If you really ask your friend if he managed to use Shizuku, if it works for him, or if you were interested, once I could, because now I have the app. With that, I can open my phone interface on my Windows PC, every app. So then I could show you how to activate Shizuku if you want. I could go through the process with you once, but it would take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe a little longer. It depends on how I manage to present it to you and explain it to you and your questions. If everything works, if the app doesn't crash. If you can't manage to figure it out on yourself or your friend, and you would like me to explain it to you, I could do that once. I'm just telling you that in case you are struggling and you think it's annoying to go through it with ChatGPT. But just a proposition if you need help.
Okay, thank you. I would ask you usually what other stuff you have on your mind, but moving forward, I've talked about it before, but I would really prefer if we had the poker part of the meeting first, and then we can chat a bit afterwards, if that's fine with you.
Sure, you already told me that. That's great for me. It's a little, how do I say, it's a little academic, it's a little strict. If every time we meet, the first thing we do is look at some hands and only then we say 2-3 words. This time we didn't use so much time, but still, I think only 15 minutes. That's a little better than most of the times. If you want to talk about something, we still can do it at the end. But it's just, if the first thing I show you is some hands, I think that's very strict. I think it's nice if we have a very small discussion, if it's just 5 minutes to know how you're doing and how I am doing. And then we can go straight to some hands. And afterwards, if there's anything we want to talk about, we can have a longer discussion. Today, I have 2 hands. If you want, we can take a look at them. And if not, we can play a game or we can do whatever comes to mind.
I think let's start with that. Then I have some other ideas that could be helpful.
Okay, I'm on the hijack. I have ace, queen, offsuit. I made an ace, but there's the risk of a flush. I want him out of the hand because I don't think he has anything. I go for 2/3 of a pot. I think you might be mad at me already. What do you think about me playing my ace? Or if I should have just checked and played more safe and see what he does?
Why do you think I would be mad at you already?
Because I think you want me to be more safe and see what he does, if he checks or not.
I think we already saw that, no?
This hand, no, it's new. I played it last week.
But I think we already saw on the flop what your opponent did. You could read it at the bottom left corner here. At the bottom left corner, you can read what happened.
He checked. Okay, I thought he didn't check. He's first to act, so he checked. Since he checked, I felt a little more safe and I went for 2/3 of a pot. But do you think it's still too risky? Should I have waited for the turn to do that? If the turn is safe.
No, I think you certainly can bet here. You have a pretty strong hand, but I would have bet not as big. I know we want him to fold here, but if he does not fold, then suddenly I would start to feel uncomfortable because the pot would be getting very big, very close to all in. And even though we have a good hand, if he comes all in with us, I'm not sure it's exactly amazing proposition for us. He could still make 2 pair, have 3 of a kind, have a flush. Well, it's a larger bet than I would expect here. He might not have diamonds. Then we wouldn't want to bet so big and make it scary because he could have a hand that's very weak then without any diamonds. Or if he has 1 diamond, I think the math helps here knowing that 1 in 5 times he will hit a diamond on the next card. I don't think it's required to put so much pressure on him here. But I can't say it's too wrong as well. He did check too. You do have one of the best ace you could have on the board. Just to me, I feel like once he calls, then I would start to feel uncomfortable. That's where if I bet less here, I wouldn't feel so uncomfortable here.
But
yeah.
Is the difference so much between a half pot, 2/3 of a pot? How much is that in big blinds? The difference would be 6. Here we have 9, something like that. And the difference is 3 big blinds, around 3 big blinds. I have 46 big blinds left. Is that really a lot for me?
Well, the thing is, pots grow progressively in poker. You would also put 3 extra big blinds in. Total, the pot will be how much greater on the turn if both of you put 3 extra big blinds in?
6 big blinds.
Okay. Now that would make all the turn bets greater, which would, as a result, make every river bet also greater. If you inflate the pot pre-flop and flop, then it's also half pot will be larger now on the turn and larger again on the river.
The thing is just that even though I have an ace and a very good kicker, still with that board, which is a rainbow board, because it can make a flush. Is that correct? Can I say that? Last time we talked about dry boards. Is this a dry board or a wet board? Is a wet board also a rainbow board, or are there different terminology?
Firstly, do you know what rainbow board is?
Maybe it's only when you can make a straight. A rainbow board is a dangerous board, but I don't know what it exactly has to have on the board to be a rainbow board.
It's actually not a dangerous board.
But what is it then?
A rainbow board means when the cards are 3 different suits on the flop.
Oh,
It's a
so then it's more chances of being a dry board. It's not for sure a dry board because you could still make a straight, but it is less dangerous.
Yes, exactly. Rainbow boards usually are quite dry. One aspect of a dry board is a rainbow board. On this board, I would say it's relatively dry. The cards are wide apart. Well, this would be called a monotone board. Monotone board is sort of the opposite of a rainbow board. Then in between with a flush draw board or a 2-tone flop where there would be like 2 to a diamond or 2 to a hearts for a draw of a flush draw. What makes this board sort of dry is you either have the diamond or you don't. The cards are wide apart. There's really no straight draws on this board. Ace, 9 and 3, 1 high, 1 middle, 1 low. That doesn't make too many straight cards. Another sign of a dry board is if people don't play these cards very often. In this case, it's not super dry because people play which cards out of this board?
An ace and a 9.
An ace, yes. Also, 1 diamond could change things here, but most of the time your opponent doesn't have a diamond actually. I think that's something that's good to know, that he has a more likely to not have a diamond. I think overall, I would feel more safe with your hand. I know you don't have a diamond, but it's sort of a thing where you're either way ahead or way behind, or essentially this. If he has two diamonds or two pair or something, then our hand has almost no chance if he already has two diamonds. But if he doesn't, then it's quite unlikely he has something too dangerous. That's why I think you could go for a big bet, because unless he has a flush, it's very tough for him to have a better hand. It's not to do with danger, it's more this could scare away a 9, for example. 9 could already start to fold, and 9 isn't very dangerous for us. Also, what if he has a weak ace with no diamonds? Again, that hand might get scared seeing such a big bet. My idea of a bet here is I don't want him to fold like a weak ace without a diamond or a 9 without a diamond. That's doing very weakly against us. But the benefit of a big bet is sometimes he might fold a weak 1 diamond hand. I can see that benefit, that he might fold some 1 diamond hand. But I'm not worried if he has 1 diamond too much, because you're still ahead of a hand with 1 diamond. I hope I didn't confuse you with these comments.
No, they're great. You're correct. The issue is when I play poker, I feel a lot of anxiety. I always am very that I lose the hand because, as you told me with the game, even when you have pocket aces, you're not sure that you win. I always feel a lot of anxiety when I play poker. In trading, I don't feel that much anxiety, but it might change in the future. But for now, I don't feel that much anxiety because once your analysis is right, you just put your stop loss at break even. And then, of course, if it was very profitable and you don't exit, you might get out at break even, but that's not something very bad. Usually, when things turn around, you realize it, that now it's a good moment to exit your trade. I don't feel that much anxiety. Now, don't say it's easy, but I don't feel that much anxiety. But when I play here, there's much psychology involved, like scaring the people or bluffing. It all creates a lot of anxiety for me. The markets, I manage a little better, but maybe it's just my inexperience because I'm on a low level. But I feel like you always have to worry a lot. In trading also, you always have to worry a lot. You always have to look at charts, but I don't feel that much anxiety. Anyways, just my thought
No,
about it.
I would like to comment on that. So I guess what I feel differently is when I'm worried, I usually don't want to bet very big, because when I'm worried, I would want to more often be cautious, leave myself an escape room. I just feel like with a big bet, often you get to fold hands that wouldn't worry you. If he really has something dangerous, then a big bet won't protect you from that. I will say that again. I think that's quite profound, if I could say so. That if he has a hand that really worries your hand, a big bet cannot protect you from a hand that's really dangerous for your hand. But if his hand isn't so dangerous, then you don't necessarily need a big bet to make that fold or to win that hand.
But now I go for half pot. Then comes the turn and he checks again. What do? I keep betting, don't I? If the
Yeah,
turn
why not? Yeah.
if the turn is harmless. Then comes the river. He checks again. Like, I think, okay, he checked twice, but he also called twice. Maybe he does that with second bear or something like this. There's a chance I would even bet the turn. Then I find out that he had 2 pair or a flush, and I lost a lot. My game is nearly over because I was too confident, just because he was sneaky and he was always checking. You can get in very difficult situation whatever way you play it. But I understand it's better here to just go for half pot.
It's very interesting what you said. On that, you are correct. If he has a better hand, we're gonna get in trouble. It's very good you notice that. If he's playing it sneaky and smart, we will lose a big pot with our ace queen. It's just that the gods were against us this hand, like a Greek would say possibly. But here's the thing. Now, every time he does not have a very strong hand, well, if we're making it very obvious for the opponent, then actually he will be able to escape when he has a weaker hand than ace queen. What I would like to is create a scenario where we will get punished if he has a better hand, but maybe the opponent also can get punished if he has a weaker hand than ace queen. At least there's an upside for us. If he has a flush, he's sneaky. That time there won't be an upside. But another time where he has a nine or an ace, I think there's an upside to not going so strong to scare these hands away. Actually, in this case, I would personally prefer more like a 1/3 pot bet here. Even the half pot you're talking about to me seems quite a large bet, because that means after the turn bet, it's still gonna be, yes, we're gonna bet. If you go this way or half pot, once he calls, pot's around 30 or 25 chips. If you bet again on the turn around that range, then you would have a little more than half pot left by the river. You would have made a very big pot with this. In a way, I would be thinking here of, okay, how could I bet in a way that a nine will call, that a weak ace will call? I like to call it targeting. I'm betting in a way where I'm looking for things to go good for me. I'm looking for a way a nine could call, or looking for a way an ace could call. I think even half pot could be too scary for a nine.
Okay, I get it, Norman. You're
But
correct.
it does feel dangerous if you make a small bet here and he doesn't fold. The thing is, it will feel less dangerous to me than if he doesn't fold to a big bet. That feels even scarier, because you should have a stronger hand that calls a big bet than what would call a small bet. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes
When
a lot
will
of
he on
sense.
average be stronger? Once he calls a big or a small bet?
When he calls a big bet.
Okay, here's another question. The thing you're worried about, how people set a trap to you. When do you think he's more likely to set a trap? When you go for small bets or when you go for a big bet?
When I go for small bets.
I think that one's not obvious. In general, I believe small bets get raised more often, because you might feel like I have to raise to grade the big pot. But if you go big, he might have a sense that, well, you're making a big bet anyway. He doesn't really have to put too much effort into making even a greater pot. But it could go two ways. Another time, if you bet big, he might think that it's time that he can re-raise because you have something good. I think that one's not the clear one.
Okay, Norman. But poker is a ruthless game, because somebody always get punished. Either I get punished here or he gets punished. But somebody gets always punished when you play that game. It's a zero-sum game. One wins, the other loses. The market is a little the same also. But the thing is, you don't just actually play against the people in the market. You play against everybody, because everybody on earth is in the economic system. They cannot escape from it. So they're just people who participate in it and try to make smart decisions and be in a better position next year, in 10 years, in 30 years. There are people who don't. But the people who don't, they also get punished because of inflation. You play against everybody, actually. It's a zero-sum game because the money doesn't get generated out of thin air. It is just a value transfer game. Somebody loses value, somebody else gains value. But the money doesn't generate on its own money. Money cannot generate on its own money. If you have 100 USD turning around in an economy, it will always be only 100 USD. Unless you start inflating it, but then you punish everybody who has some of those 100 USD. That's our world. But in poker, it is very hard. It's very cruel because you see your opponent. You're going to punish him. In the market, at least, you never see their faces.
Well, I see it as a win-win game, as in you win or you learn in a way, or at least you have an opportunity to learn, but it's difficult, yes. But sometimes getting punished could be a good thing if that improves you in a way, but overall correct in what you say. That's why I feel like it's important in poker, when you play your hand, you really want to maximize against all the hands opponent could have that are weaker, and then minimize the losses against the hand that he has better. In this case, are we maximizing against an ace or a weaker nine? Well, only if he will call this bet, which I'm not sure he will. But are we minimizing against when he has a better hand? Certainly not. I think that's an important question to ask yourself in a poker hand. We don't know really in most cases what side they're on, if they have a weaker or a stronger hand. But whatever the outcome, the goal is sort of to minimize the loss against when he does have a stronger hand, and when he doesn't, then for him not to see the risk and make the mistake. It's sort of a practice of cautiousness in a way. It's like a game of constant punishment and learning to take less punishment. Everybody takes punishment in poker, but to take less punishment, and also learning how to, I guess, give punishment to the opponents, for lack of a better wording, but maybe not the best. That's just one outlook to it. But personally, if you just want to go with what I would do here, I would have gone for quite a small bet, just 3 or 4 chips here, because the pot's already large. Pot's already 13 by you making a 5 big blind raise pre-flop. We already have top pair, right? We don't have to worry about a bigger card than an ace coming. The only scary card for us really is a diamond. If he has a good diamond, we can't push that away. If he has the king of diamonds, queen of diamonds, jack of diamonds, these hands, they're going to stay with us in this hand. I feel like against a stronger hand, we can't really protect against that. That will take its draw and try to give us punishment. What we can do is put him in an interesting spot if he has like a 9 or a weaker hand, that he could be interested to continue then. But again, I don't think you made a big mistake, because your hand is a good hand. It is worth a big bet. The only thing that worries me is that we're making this now an all-in pot, which what I'm trying with my small bet is to make it not an all-in pot, just a normal pot essentially.
What is hard for me is that sometimes I have to do a 2/3 of a pot because I want to win the hand immediately. Here, I don't want actually him to win the hand immediately. I thought I did, but after talking with you, I don't think so anymore. But the thing is, how do I know the difference when I have to win the hand immediately and when I don't have to win the hand immediately? And when it's worth to do a 2/3 of a pot, when it's not worth? Is it just me telling myself that the turn and the river could be very dangerous because of that? I should win it straight away. Let's say I have, instead of an ace, I have a 10. That's much more dangerous, because if a jack comes, a queen, a king, an ace, then he could have all those hands and it wouldn't be so nice. I'm just wondering, because there are a lot of cases where you actually want to win immediately. How can I know the difference? I think there's no one answer you can give. I think it's only experience.
I think I can give an answer to it. I think I can. My answer would be, it's actually not to do with how scary the turn or river is, even though it looks like it's going to be about that. I feel like that thing is less important for that. In my mind, the real importance there is, what will the opponent do? Firstly, when would you want to win the hand immediately? Is when your hand is in a vulnerable state, where the turn and river could change your hands. For that reason, this hand would qualify that we're worried of a diamond. There will be a diamond decently often, a bit more than 1 in 3 times by the river here. That's the first thing where we have the urgency, where we're worried about things. But that's only the first part, because the second part is, well, can we really make the opponent fold something that worries us? That's the key aspect about that. Can we really make them fold something that worries us? Now, in this case, actually, the nice thing about your move here is you possibly can make him fold a weak diamond if he has that. If he has pocket 5s, the 5 is a diamond. Maybe he folds that because 5s are low pair. It's a weak diamond. Maybe it does. But a high diamond here, which people play more higher cards, If he has any diamond higher than a 10, I think it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get that to fold. I think that's the key question for it. For that, it's good to have an example of this. So the example I would give you is, let's say you have a board with a low cards. You tell me a board with 3 low cards.
9-7-2.
Okay. Now
Also
what
good.
I will give you there is I will give you a hand like, let me give you pocket tens there on 9-7-2. Okay. What is worrying for pocket tens on 9-7-2?
Nothing.
Okay, at that moment, nothing. But what cards to come would be worrying for pocket?
Any picture card.
Any card with a picture on it, or I guess an ace. Well, you could consider ace a picture card. There's quite a few of these. There's a high chance that one of these cards will come on the turn or a river. However, let's say the opponent does have picture cards. Will they call a big bet on 9-7-2? Let's say someone has a hand like King Jack or King Queen. He has 2 cards dangerous for your pocket tens. Could you get that hand to fold? Because they would.
Yeah, I think I can.
Okay, that is the difference. It's a very subtle difference. But the question is, if you are going for making something fold, the most important question for you to ask yourself is, well, what is that? Is it worth it to go to try to make that fold? With pocket tens on 9-7-2, I think it's worth it. I think it's possible also. That these are 2 good things together. Now on this board, however, I'm less convinced you can get a diamond to fold. But here's the interesting part. If you disagree with me, you can go for a bet like this. If your opinion is you can make a lot of hands with a diamond fold, then you could have an argument for a big bet too. What I'm saying is I don't believe you can make many diamonds fold. I think usually opponent has a large diamond. There's always a cost to every move. What is the cost of trying to make some hands fold? What's the inherent cost in trying to make some hands fold? It's sort of like, what's the cost of kicking someone out of your bar?
You make less money.
Exactly. They would possibly want to buy a drink in your bar. The cost of trying to make stuff fold is that now you also might make hands fold you didn't want to make fold. In this instance, we never want just no diamond hand to fold. Whatever no diamond hand. If he has an ace, a 9, if he has, however, he could have pocket tens. If he has no diamonds, we don't want him to fold. Actually, he's more likely to have no diamonds than to have a diamond. I would guess around 2/3 of the time he doesn't have a diamond. The cost of going too big is you might make some of these hands fold. How many? That's unclear. You might think maybe this opponent never folds an ace. Well, then it's not a big problem to bet big. But a 9, I think 9 is definitely sensitive. I do believe a weak ace is also sensitive. I think if he has just ace 2 or ace 4, I'm not sure it wants to call a big bet all the time, every time. Maybe it does, but for me at least, I wouldn't be very happy as him with a weak ace.
I would fold instantly.
That's very good. To summarize, targeting is how I think of it. To have some hands in mind the opponent could have. What decision will they do? I think your 9-7-2 board you said was a good example of that, where it is possible to make a lot of those picture cards fold.
Thank you for that very interesting explanation. I think it's an important subject in poker. I'm glad we could talk about it. But as a philosopher, I just want to add one small comment. We don't have to go into it. But I ask myself, is it really good that we have a society which is a lot based on punishment? Civil life, family, anything you do, the market, there's a lot of punishment. The laws, there's a lot of punishment. Never-ending wars, there's a lot of punishment in the world we live in. And is that really good? And I'm not sure it is actually. Because when you punish people, there's 2 things that happen. One is he's strong enough and he keeps fighting. Even though you punish him, he never gives up, which is great. That's the Stoic ideal. A man so courageous that he will never give up. Doesn't matter how much punishment you inflict on him. And that's a Stoic ideal. That's an important thing. But is it really good? Because unless you have that much energy and willpower in you, most people will never have it. They will simply stop. Now, I don't think you need punishment actually to learn. Punishment, I wouldn't say it's even good to learn, to integrate punishment in the classroom or anywhere else. I wouldn't say it's good. For example, when I play the piano, I never get punished. My only punishment is that I have to pay the lessons. But I never get punished. And usually I do enough work so that my teachers don't say, "Oh, there's no point in teaching you. I'm not that bad. They don't give up in seeing me." But I never get punished. Now, does a pianist get punished? Actually, he shouldn't get punished. The only way he can get punished is that he wants to be the best. He tries very hard to win against the best piano player in a competition. He doesn't make it. Then he gets punished. Or he worked a lot to play a concerto, to play for the public, because there are people who want to be performers. Then they tell themselves, okay, I'm happy with what I did, but I know all my shortcomings, and it's not as good as I would like it to do. And because they always strive for perfection, and they can never 100% achieve that, and they see all the little mistakes that nobody else could ever hear or ever realize, but they know them. Because of that, they punish themselves because they think that what they have done is not good enough. But that's a mentality thing. I'm still not sure that punishment is good, because if you integrate punishment, a lot of people would give up. It's just too hard. What do you think about that? I still ask you because I find it's an interesting subject to see if punishment is necessary or not. Apart from the Stoic ideal that somebody will never break, that's a beautiful thing to watch. Apart from that, I'm not sure that punishment is actually good.
Somehow, first thing that came to my mind is, let's say you're a little lamb. You walk away from your herd. Your mother makes that noise that says, "Come back, don't go away." But you don't listen. You walk away from the herd. Suddenly, there's wolves that are appearing somewhere in the distance. You see your whole herds moving away from the wolves. The mother's even now more impatient, really. Lambs can't speak in words, but you can hear the anxiety in your mother's face. Like she's really saying desperately with the sheep voice that, "Don't go there. Come back immediately." And you decide to not listen. It's not a human law. It's not to do with anything that a legislator somewhere decided. It's just this picture from nature came to mind. And what would likely happen to that little lamb if they were even more daring now? Instead of not just listening to their mom, they walk towards those wolves. What would be the likely outcome? It would be very brutal. It would be very self-correcting, you could say, in like a global way, how nature keeps its balance. If something does something that does not fit with the overall way the nature system is, if you do something that's not natural for what you are, if you're a bird, suddenly you try to go inside the water, but you're not a bird that can go to the water, you immediately would start to drown. If you're a lamb that goes towards the wolves, you would very likely immediately get eaten by it. I know you meant something a bit differently, but I was just thinking how that overall life is quite rigid and strict in some of the things as well. How the universe is in where we live, it seems like. I didn't mean it in poker sense. I mean, maybe the punishment is a strong word. I feel like often it's how it would, going back to the lamb example, I think it would start with something like that at first mother would say, just raise their voice a little bit. You could say that's a weak punishment. Then maybe they would come and nudge the lamb, like not really hurt them, but they would maybe push them. That still is gonna hurt the little lamb a little bit. Now, next time, mother maybe will scream. That's even a more greater degree of punishment. Then maybe they would really forcefully push the little lamb or drag them somehow, like some animals do. They can be very forceful if the little offspring isn't doesn't listen second, third, fourth, fifth time. Then if that doesn't even work, then maybe at some point there would be the punishment of getting eaten by a wolf or something like that. I feel like there's like progressive levels to the punishment. It's the first levels of a punishment aren't too bad, really. If someone's cautious, then the punishment from poker really won't be something that hurts too much as well. I think something like exercising in a gym is a good example of that. If we think of someone who's very strong and muscular, they can move a lot of weight, but how do they get there? Well, they're just taking these little steps forward. They're taking like little challenges to their body, and then they get used to that, and then they get stronger and stronger and stronger. But if the first day you would give them that big weight, well, then they would be crushed by it and could be dead or injured. That's like getting eaten by a wolf in a way. Well, that's why in poker, there's things like bankroll management. You shouldn't really gamble for too much, and all these things which all the people really have heard about, but some people still don't listen to. Then that's where they can get big punishments, sometimes lose their homes or lose more than they can afford in that way. But in essence, a little punishment, maybe punishment is just too big of a word for it, but I just see it as a correcting mechanism. It's like a nudge, really, a little bump to keep you on the right track. There's progressive level. Well, essentially, you understood my point with that.
Please answer 2 questions because I think I get it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. The first question is, do you think that punishment is necessary? Answer it yes or no. If possible, don't talk 1 hour about it because I don't think we have time for it. It's not that I'm not interested. I would be very interested if you talk a lot about it. If you think that punishment is necessary. The second question is, should you expose yourself to punishment or should you avoid punishment? That's my second question. If you can answer that, it would be great.
I haven't thought about these things. Well, firstly, credit to you. You ask very interesting questions here. I feel like I'd want to think about it more, but especially the second question is interesting to me. But I do have some quick reply. I think the punishment being necessary, I guess it's like a philosophical question of, do we need order and rules in the universe altogether? Or could it just be everything is like with no laws of nature, nothing, everything can just express what they are, their energy, how it is. But somehow I feel like if there's a system, different parts working together, there has to be some order to it one way or another. Even in this meeting, right, where there's 2 of us, there has to be a way for us to have a mutual ground so we can have a discussion. Even as we haven't talked through it, there's some basic cordiality rules. You could think of this as unspoken rules or something. It's not to limit us so much. It's not that we act in a way to like hold ourselves back in a way. I think it's mostly that there would be a common ground for a conversation. Somehow I'm thinking of, I feel that with the whole universe as well, for the wonder of the world, for the nature, for any of this to work together, I feel like there has to be some common, I would have to think about it more, but this thing is to think more like some adjustments everyone has to do for the common system to work. Somehow like that. Just like we both have to make some sacrifices in our personal liberty to have a connection with each other. All the trees and animals, all the people in the society, I feel like have to do some sacrifices that to also to get the benefits or the enjoyment of being part of the whole thing, to not be excluded from the wonder of the nature. At least that's the first thing that comes to mind. I will write your questions down. I do find them very interesting. The second question, which I have even less thoughts of, I think it will be a quick answer, but I found more interesting. Should we expose ourselves to punishment? In a way, I feel like that's just exposing ourselves to the world, that the world will signal back to us. It's not that we're seeking punishment. It's more like you're just seeking to experience life. As a consequence, there will be a correction that will be put forward. Just as there's a small puppy and then there's a mother dog, that small puppy is gonna at first not know any rules of the world, essentially. It's gonna try to do all these things. Maybe it will try to bite someone, and then mother might get angry, really bite back at the puppy a little bit, so the puppy feels some feedback. Okay, I don't want to do that. Then mother doesn't act so well. Or maybe puppy will try to run away or something. Where I'm going with that, it's not like we're seeking punishment. It's just that the punishment is what you will likely get because no one is perfect. It's just the cost of exploring the world, I feel like. But I'd have to think more about this. Very interesting question. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for your reply. I will think about it until next time. You can do all the research you want. You can ask ChatGPT's opinion if you want or whatever. There's no cheating. But next time, if you can give a more structured answer once you have thought about it, it would be very interesting. Because that's a subject actually that it has a lot of meaning to me. Because I think a lot of, however you answer the question, it might have a lot of consequences for your life and how you treat other people. The question around punishment is important. Even if there's not so much physical punishment in our societies anymore, there's still a lot of punishment for a lot of other stuff. You can get involved in things that are more punishing than others.
I would only add this. I feel like punishment should be done with kindness. Like a big sheep is punishing a smaller sheep. It's not really trying to hurt that lamb. I think that's where humans sometimes can be evil. I feel like that's where evil comes from, where you're just punishing not to teach, but to show your power, to just hurt someone, to make it worse for them. That's just something that came to mind that I feel like that's the key. I feel like if it's done with kindness, then maybe punishment is not the word, then it's just giving a lesson or teaching, really. Maybe that's the essence of teaching is when you correct someone with kindness other than with unnecessary force. I think the word punishment that's a problem. Maybe the word punishment already has bad connotations that it already implies overly forceful action.
I don't
Yeah.
want to just talk about which word we should choose and which is the best word and make everything sound nice and rosy. I don't think that's a good approach. I like the
Right.
word punishment, not because I endorse punishment. That's not at all. If I ask you those questions, it's because I'm not sure at all that punishment is necessary for our society. I'm not sure at all that it is beneficial for us. That's why I asked those questions. I don't like punishing anybody. But by punishment, just the thing you expose you to something, you will get some pain out of it. You get some pain because it is hard. You get some pain because maybe something goes wrong. And should you expose yourself to that? I use the term punishment because it implies that you will suffer. You will suffer physically or you will suffer mentally because you get involved with it. The question is, should you expose yourself to that or should you just avoid it? Don't do it. That was one of my two questions. That's why I use the term punishment. But I think you understand it perfectly. We can dig into it a little more during our next lessons.
Could you remind me what your first question was as well?
Hmm.
The second one was, should we expose ourselves to it? But the first one, do you remember? The
Yeah,
first question, do we need punishment in this
I
world?
think exactly. I think it was exactly that.
Right, great.
Thank you a lot for taking an interest in it. To me, it's very interesting because I'm a philosopher and social and critic, as you say.
Good to remember that.
Yeah.
I'm also a citizen of this universe. I'm a member of this universe. I do also find it an interesting question.
Those words, those terms are just words, Norman. Telling myself that I'm a philosopher or a social critic, that's not putting me on a high ground. I just laugh about it just as you do because I understand why you call me that. You're the first person who does it.
Yeah, it's quite fitting,
Yeah.
I find it.
Great, Norman. What do we do? Do we still look at the second hand, finish this one?
I have to say I have another meeting starting at the half an hour, but until then we can carry on.
Okay, let's finish this hand.
I think we discussed all this and he does call, and well, now I think we should readjust. Certainly, I don't think we should continue betting here. there's still some hope. What's the hope here? What could make sense for him to call a big bet on the flop without a diamond? What would be the likely hand? What type of a hand? Can you give me an example?
If he doesn't have a diamond, what could he have bet? A10 offsuit.
Very good. I also thought of ace 10 somehow, right? Maybe ace 7, but yeah, something like that. Here's the thing. If he has that hand, well, we're likely going to win the hand anyway. He will be scared of the diamonds. You will be scared. You both have an ace, but you would have a stronger kicker through the queen. Things could go still quite well. If he has that ace, I don't think we need to do anything. You will mostly win this pot. But if he has a diamond, well, we can't make a diamond fold. If he called a big bet on the flop, he liked his diamond. Now he would really like it. So my opinion here is quite clear for you to not bet if he gives that chance. He will go first, but then I would not bet on this turn.
Because it's just way too dangerous.
Well, exactly. Especially he has to have something because betting happened on the flop. So he can't have a random hand. He called a big bet on the flop. He either had a good diamond or an ace. It's usually that. He can't just have a random hand like queen 10 of hearts. That wouldn't have called the flop. Or pocket sevens with no diamond. You really went for a fold on the flop, but he didn't fold. That's very likely now that it's either a good ace or a diamond, or sometimes both. He could have ace 10 and the 10 is a diamond. You summarized it well with it's just too dangerous now. But what I want to highlight is it's dangerous based on the action that has happened, that you have filtered out all the weak hands with your big bet on the flop. You made it that he cannot really possibly have just very unlikely for him to have a very weak hand. Now, the danger is quite high at this point, yes.
He checks.
Good news for us. Good news. I still would not bet here.
Okay, let's see if I was prudent. I
I
check.
like it. Now, the 9 doesn't worry me too much because you did bet big on the flop. I think he would fold the 9 often. But again, see what he does first here. Wow, he's not shy here. He makes a very big bet. Now, the question is, could he be bluffing? Well, always that could be the case in poker. But my problem with that is, well, what could he be bluffing with? It's very tough for me to think of something. Because really, the only thing that comes to mind is that ace 10 you mentioned. The funny thing here is, which hand is stronger at this moment? Ace 10 or your ace queen? Remember how poker hands is playing your best 5 cards. What's your best 5 card poker hand?
5 cards. It's aces, nines, king. My queen doesn't matter.
Exactly. Our queen doesn't matter here anymore, which means even if he is making a bluff with just an ace without any diamond, how much of a pot would we win if he had a hand like that?
Half pot.
We would just win half of that pot. That's even more dangerous for us.
Maybe he knows that. That's why he goes for his bet.
Okay, that's a good argument. The only question here is, how could you be sure that you do not have a diamond? Now, I know you did not bet on the turn, but maybe you did not bet on the turn because your diamond wasn't the best diamond. You had a mediocre diamond that you didn't want to risk too much. I think you could still have a diamond. Sometimes you could even have the best diamond. Maybe you were being sneaky there on the turn with the queen of diamonds. What you say is possible. It's possible for him to try to make you fold out for half a pot, but he would take an enormous risk for that to try to win half a pot more. It's just possible that why did he call a big bet on the flop? Because he liked diamonds. Why did he like diamonds? Because he had a good diamond. Now he's just betting because he has a big diamond. In my mind, the obvious is more likely here. It's more likely that he just has a big diamond. He just had 10 seconds to think about all of that. Would he really think all that with his ace, that I'm going to go for a big bet to fold another ace here? I'm not scared that he might call me with a 9 or a a diamond that he did bad. It's possible, but in my mind, it's quite clearly a fold. That's what I'm saying here.
Even when you say it's possible, I find it very unlikely because I would never do
Exactly.
that, what you just said. I fold because that's the only thing I can do in that situation. But it was a very interesting hand. I think we agree on that.
We do. I feel like the big thing was learning about protecting the hand. If you remember the two rules, first, does our hand need protection? And then second is, can we get that protection from folding out these hands we would want? I think that's something that could be helpful for you.
Great, thank you for reminding me that. And it's pocket sixes. I don't think it's very long. If you don't mind, we can take it.
Yeah, let's
I
try
think
to get this one also.
the thing is, he goes for an all-in. I'm chip
Almost
leader.
an all-in.
Almost, but that's the same. What he does is so sneaky. It's even scarier than all-in.
Exactly, I agree, exactly. To me, this is more scary because he's trying to appear weak. He's trying to be like, hey, I don't really want to go all in. To me, this looks even scarier. You're right.
Now, pocket six is a good hand. It's a mate hand. He might not have a mate hand, but also it is just a six. There's a lot that can beat it. 7, 8, 9, and so on. Should I gamble my tournament live with those sixes, or should I just fold and wait for a better spot to go all in? Because I'm chip leader. Should I risk that now with that guy making it so scary? I don't think I should. I think I fold it. But what do you say?
At first glance, this hand seems not interesting. They go 6 big blinds all in. How could you fold a pair for 6 big blinds? But I think this is in a case where actually I think you can fold. I agree with you actually here. I know usually we would never fold sixes for a 6 big blind all in, but there's a lot at stake here. If you get this wrong, suddenly you get 4th place. Are we really ahead here after he makes this weird almost all-in raise? What are we hoping? We're hoping he has pocket fives, that he has ace five. That's the only time we would be really happy about. The other time, if he has king queen, ace seven, it's just going to be a big gamble at that point, which I don't think we need so much. I know there's dead money in the middle, but sometimes it just has aces and then there would be huge trouble here. I think it's a tough spot, but I'm very impressed if you folded that player 8 is short. We are chip leader, like you said. I like this fold actually. I think it's a strong fold.
Okay, what does perfect theory say?
Good question. I would guess machine does not fold it. Well, I think it will be close though, but I have to unfortunately go now.
Can you tell me next
I
time?
took
Or
a screenshot. I will send you what the program would do sometime later today or tomorrow. Okay?
great, awesome, Norman. And I did fold. So it was awesome talk to you. I really enjoyed our lesson. Thanks a lot. I wish you the best, and I'm very fortunate that I can meet you next week. Take care.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Au revoir.
Bye bye.